Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer, and I'd like to welcome you to today's CUGC User Share. We are going to be talking about WEM, user experience with policies and profiles. It's a big topic. Before we get started, I want to introduce who's on our call today. So if we could skip to the next slide. All right, thanks. We have Steve Greenberg. He is the Phoenix Metro CUGC leader and a CTP. He's also a consultant within client computing. He's going to be moderating today's presentation and discussion and keeping things going for us. So Steve, you want to come on and say hello and then introduce our main speakers?
Hey, Stephanie. Thanks for having me again. It's great to be here. As you said, I'm going to try to moderate. We have two wild men today. So we've got Hal Lange and Revord. So I will try to moderate them. It will not be easy. And we also have Webster and some other hecklers in the crowd today. So this is probably going to be a lot of fun. This is their cartoon imagery. Hal is a hobbit, and Ryan is some monster. What's that, Ryan?
Well, actually, we should give points out to whoever knows what it is, but it is a Dark Angel graphic from Paintball back in the 90s, and I just won't let go of the avatar.
And just so you know, we are not nerds. Just want to establish that up front.
No, not at all.
Let's see what you really look like. Okay, some good-looking guys. So we got Hal Lange and Ryan. And before we jump in, user experience is critical. It's everything. It's a big topic. So we want to ask you guys in the audience a few questions first to understand how you're using WEM, how much you know about it. So Stephanie, if you can pop the first poll, we're going to ask everybody to tell us what's on your mind, fill out the poll. It's just going to be 3 questions right now, and then we can understand who's in the audience and what you guys are interested in, your background in this area. So who's currently using WEM or planning to use it in the next 6 months? You could be currently using it, planning to, or not yet, or not sure. Okay, the numbers are coming in. So far, planning is winning. So let's keep filling that out. Getting good response. Appreciate your input. And Stephanie, you let me know when we think we've got enough data.
You're at about 85% voted, so you're pretty close there. Yeah, 87.
And still planning to is in the lead. So the audience sees the results, right, in there?
No, but I think I can share them. I'll close it out now. And
okay, so great. 1/3 is currently using. Good to have you hardcore people on. And lots of people planning to, which is a great idea. It's built-in functionality, and it's important, and not sure. So I think we're going to get these numbers up by the end of this session, once you get to see what Hal and Ryan have to say. And then if we can move on to our next question.
All right, that is the profile poison of choice, correct?
Yep.
All right, here it comes.
What is your profile poison of choice? Sounds a little intense there, Hal.
There's so many flavors out there. It's you pick your poison. They all have their own caveats.
And does it ever really feel good, right? You're always struggling on some level, so that's fair enough.
Always.
So we've got local, roaming, UPM, or some other solution. Looks like UPM is way in the lead, which I would expect, especially in combination with WEM.
Yep.
Oh, roaming is way down there. Things have changed, huh? Roaming used to be the main.
Yeah, and there was a while that other solution.
Okay, that's probably a good data set. Citrix UPM by far is the main solution in use. And then we've got one more question.
Current login speed?
Current login speed. Now be honest, guys, it's anonymous. No shame. Just tell us where you're at with your current login speed in the environment you maintain. Some people maintain multiple environments or consultants. Maybe just throw up an average. We just want to get a feel for what everybody is currently experiencing. It's probably going to be pretty good because we got a lot of UPM users and a lot of WEM users.
Yeah, if UPM wasn't so high, I would say they're lying, but since UPM was so high, that seems about accurate.
Yeah. And we've got plenty of honest people that say 45 plus.
Yes.
That's pretty good. Well, thank you guys for interacting up front. It's great to have you all here. And I'm going to move you into the content that Hal's going to cover with you. And Hal, I think it's safe to say, is the leading expert in WEM, certainly in the U.S., because him and I were involved very, very early before Citrix acquired it and had been deploying it. So you've got a great resource here. We're going to kick it off with the concept that user experience is king. And one observation before I hand it off to Hal is, consulting for 20 years in this space, it doesn't matter what beautiful system you built, it doesn't matter how well it's designed, it doesn't matter how perfectly it's patched and optimized. If the user doesn't have a good experience, it just doesn't matter. So at the end of the day, it matters who's using it and how they perceive it. So Hal, with that note, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you for taking the introduction all the way into the next slide there. The whole idea is exactly what Steve said. I mean, I'm a recovering consultant at this point. I'm now got a real job instead of being a consultant and having fun all the time. So you always wonder, when you do that full implementation there, you got the best hardware, you spent all that time, but it's still not working right. So you're questioning your design, you're questioning your users, you just have no idea what's going on. And the end goal is always, if we had the user experience the way we wanted it, then it doesn't matter what our design is. Our design could be bad. If our users are doing this, they will follow us everywhere. I mean, you could have the worst design out there, things are falling over all the time, but if the users are happy, it really doesn't matter. So that's what the whole idea is. User experience is king. So pretty much the agenda is we're going to cover some profiles, information, some policies. Then we'll get into a little bit of the application security that WEM now can offer, which is also known as AppLocker. Just to give you a little bit of background for those that haven't implemented WEM or don't really know what it is really about, this is actually how it works. So the WEM service on machine boot there will do the load the optimization settings, which we'll cover very briefly. It'll download the UPM and any other profile technologies that you're using and set those up. And that's about all the machine-based settings besides what your agent's going to do, when it checks in, what it's going to use, that kind of thing. And then the optimization and monitoring starts. At that point, the machine stuff is done. Everything becomes user-based. So on the login, when the WEM service goes, it does the environmental settings, the app locker, and other utilities that WEM has, and then there is the order in which all your policies apply for the user agent. This slide did come from Citrix, and it came from Andrew Cresswell, the senior Citrix product manager for the WEM product, as well as many others. So I really need to thank him for this slide. That is the order, though. So when you're setting things up, make sure you are aware what order all these agent settings are coming in. That way you can rely on an environment variable to do your folder redirection and things like that. Come on. There we go. User profiles. So as you guys saw through the poll, there's a lot of different ways of doing profiles, whether it's local, roaming, third-party product, doesn't really matter, UPM. All of them have their own sets of gotchas. The main one that I can really point out is when you're setting up your roaming profiles, whatever it is, always exclude everything and include only the things that you need. So it's a very important statement. I'm going to go ahead and repeat it. You need to exclude everything and only include the things that you need. This will keep your profiles smaller, faster, leaner, meaner, better. By doing that, you get the best user experience with the fastest login. If you're just leaving the defaults on UPM, or you click that button in WEM that says save everything, or Windows 7 defaults, 2008 defaults, it's actually not set up correctly, and you're going to be missing some key components, and you're going to be doing some overlap there. So we need to make sure that we go in and configure it the way you need it. And then and I'll show you some settings there in a minute. And then policies. Again, files, registries, ADM, ADMX, whatever you're poisoning, it really doesn't matter. WEM can handle it. There's a lot of gotchas again. Some of the main ones that I'm going to show are very industry standard registry keys or policies that you'll choose. and there's a undocumented side effect. If somebody can find the document, I'd be more than grateful to see it. But it is a undocumented side effect that most people don't even know happens. So I was going to show you that as well. At this point, I was going to get into a demo unless you guys have any questions, which I haven't seen come in yet. So we'll see if this works.
And Hal, when did you finally complete this demo and feel that it was ready?
About 9 o'clock this morning.
Okay. That's a true demo.
So just to go over briefly, the optimizations are just standard based on how many CPUs you have, turn on the memory, get a little sample time, get some I/O. These are the standard processes you always put in here. I'm not going to really go into detail. I have video and another webinar out there that covers that. We go into the profile. So again, you always want to set your path, standard stuff. Delete the locally cached profiles. A lot of places don't do this. It's just sometimes you get a stale profile on there if you do not do that on logoff. If you're dealing with PBS, you never have to worry about it. Or yeah, MCS you still do occasionally. Never migrate the existing profiles, and you always want to, if there is a conflict handling, you always have to set something there. I always choose delete because I like the roaming to take over. Make sure you process the internet cookies, and if you're redirecting folders, delete the redirected folders. This will delete the local documents folder, local favorites folder, so the user doesn't see the two folders in their username. And then, of course, I leave that checked in the lab just because I'm a nice guy.
Hey, Hal, when you say process internet cookies at logoff, does that mean whack them, or what does it do?
I've read a couple different things, unfortunately. One is it just whacks them, which I don't think it actually does. The other one is it will go out and anything that is time-based, it will whack anything that has expired, so they don't stay there.
Okay. So like most things in the debt rabbit hole, you can't always trust what you read. You got to test it.
Exactly. Mileage varies on all of this. Yeah, I see a question came in, and yes, WEM can migrate the user profile from Windows 7 to Windows 10. Depending on what settings you want and depending on how you set it up, you can go back and forth without issues. The issues tend to be the application. Like if you were to upgrade Outlook, it changes the bits that it uses in the Outlook profile key. It makes it bigger with every version of Outlook you go to, so you can never go back. It's never the operating system. It's always the application that can give you the fits for that.
Let's be clear, though, what's meant, though. Are we talking about actually taking the existing profile and migrating it, or just porting over the WEM settings to the new OS?
That's a very good question.
Important distinction, because we don't want to give the wrong impression.
So WEM will take its own profile and migrate from Win 7 to Win 10. If you wanted to use WEM, and again, WEM deals with the third-party profile management. So whether that's UPM, roaming profiles, it'll deal with that as far as the third-party profile management is concerned. If it's an existing profile, you can have UPM migrate an existing profile into a UPM profile, and then that one will migrate over. You can't just go directly from a Windows 7 to a Windows 10 UPM.
Hey, Hal, we also have a question about last write wins questions when configuring it. If we have Studio configuring plus WEM, let's just say group policy, even though that wasn't asked.
Last one in. So WEM comes in on boot. The other group policies come in on boot. It's whichever one comes in last will win, unfortunately. We did find a bug with UPM that if you try and change the settings after UPM has started, you have issues. So after the UPM service has started, I should say.
Right.
Yeah,
so I think the takeaway here is it can be configured by all three. Like anything, just choose one. Otherwise, you're going to have inconsistent results is the point of this.
Exactly. Always choose one. My suggestion is always to do it through here, but if you're more comfortable in GPO or Citrix, go ahead and do that.
Same. I say lead with WEM, and if you can either figure out how to do it with WEM or comfortable, or you already have something you just trust and love it, leave it there, just don't overlap, right?
Correct. And the last question there is, can we use CPM and WEM both together? The answer is absolutely. You want to. CPM is just the profile management. WEM is putting it on steroids. WEM itself does not have its own profile solution. It uses roaming profiles or UPM or CPM for its profile solution.
Hey, Hal, why don't you
CPM
take a
stays the
moment and show the
engine,
integration
WEM
there
is the
about-
configuration.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I was going to say, Hal, why don't you show the integration real quick, because there are some overlaps in settings in WEM that control UPM. So you want to give the right impression that they work together. They're not isolated.
Can you guys see the desktop that I have right now? Am I showing that screen?
The admin console? Yes.
Yes. So this is the integration here. We enable the profile management configuration and then do all the settings in here through a GUI, just like we would for Studio or GPO. Only here we actually have everything spelled out and easy to understand what it's doing. Versus if you were to go into Studio, you have to try and figure out what each one of these things means. So this is the integration. Makes it a lot easier, as far as I'm concerned, to set it up and configure it. As far as what I was saying with the file systems, if you were to click one of these buttons, you actually, I'll go ahead and click one. You'll notice that it has app data local and then a whole lot of app data local stuff excluded. Therefore, it is not catching everything, or it's not catching anything in app data local. So all of these other things are kind of invalid at that point. So if I go out of it and back so I can reset my settings, in this case, I am doing app data local, but you see I have a couple others in here. The reason for that, besides all the standard things that come in, is I'm actually enabling Chrome to capture data under the local area. This will make it so Google Chrome is persistent for people, since Google Chrome is nice and stores everything in local app data, because that makes perfect sense. I love programmers. And then speaking of programmers, the 800-pound beast, if you don't save this custom UI, there's a Word, a PowerPoint, Excel, anything that shows up in the quick launch bar is gone, because that's what's stored in that custom UI. So you want to make sure that those are definitely saved, and then everything else, its mileage varies. You have to determine which application needs what to be saved. By default, I'm going to save the roaming because that's what Microsoft's going to do anyways, except for things I know that should be killed. And local low, I will never save by default unless you're bringing in a specific application. And then, of course, turn on your streaming. If you don't turn on the streaming, you've just lost all the benefits of UPM. That's what makes it so much faster when it gives it the file stubs.
So Hal,
Yeah.
Salim is asking about the relationship between configuring in WEM versus GPO or Studio. Can you kind of address when you have multiple options to configure how they interact?
They interact the exact same. So if I'll go ahead and show in the registry, if I can remember the password, since I'm on the clock. There we go. So when we're doing the Windows 7, or I'm sorry, when we're doing UPM through WEM, GPO, or Citrix policies, they all do it the exact same way. And what that is by doing it specifically in the registry. They just put, come on, there we are. There we go. They all do it the same way by putting it in here. So that's why I said whichever one comes in last wins. As far as all of them are concerned, they all put the same registry keys in, they all put them in the same location, so that's how they all integrate. It's all the exact same way. So choose one, otherwise you're going to overwrite yourself.
Okay, and then the determination of who's first depends on the WEM service, right? The timing of the WEM service? Or is the GPO always first?
The WEM will probably be first. And then if you had it configured in both GPO and Citrix policies, they both come down with a GP update. So,
and let's be realistic among all of us here, because we all know everybody's AD differs, right? It could be even worse than that. It could be AD comes down 5 minutes later. I've seen it.
That's what I'm getting at.
Right.
So it depends on your environment, how quickly the GPOs apply as to when they'll happen in relation to WEM.
Which can make things really ugly, because you'll think it works, and then 5 minutes later, if you don't wait, you get a nasty surprise.
Sorry, Salim, but that's the reality. So that's why you guys said earlier, try to stick with one. In a perfect environment, you wipe out the GPOs and you depend on WEM. But as you're pointing out, Ryan, that's not always possible.
Be nice if it was.
God, it'd be nice. All right. So there's one question here that I want to answer before I move on away from the UPM and go to policies, because running out of time here. The directory sync versus mirroring. I get this question a lot. So the directory synchronization is as close to real time as Citrix UPM will, or Citrix PM. I got to remember to change the name. Citrix Profile Management will allow, where it actually synchronizes the directory back up to the UPM store as close to real time as possible. It's a 5-minute delay. So if you have a application, there was one customer in the past, they actually had an application that would write temp stuff down into the app data local folder, that if they happened to launch the application, if they disconnected and it launched on a different server, that stuff wouldn't be there for them, and that actually would break the application. So we had to do a directory synchronization to make sure it's constantly going back up into the UPM store, so it would come back down every time they log in. The mirroring, all that does is that log off. If it's in the exclusion path, the mirroring will still happen. So that's the difference between the two. This one actually does as close to real-time synchronization as you can. You also need the active write back here. This one, if you enable active write back, that will enable the directory synchronization. So that's the main difference between. I hope that makes sense. As far as I will try and answer all the rest of the questions on profile if we have time at the end, or as a follow-up to the webinar here.
My buddy Brian's asking a question now about always-on groups. I know it's one of your favorite technologies. So I guess Citrix doesn't officially support always-on groups with WEM database. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, it does. It does.
Well, it works. It's not on the official supported list yet, Hal. But as you know, we both contributed to the paper for that, so it's coming. It's a matter of lack of documentation, not featureability.
Okay, because I was going to say it used to be on, when they first bought it. It was on the SQL Always On list. I guess they took it off for some bizarre reason. They did
because of lack of documentation, is my understanding, which is why we were asked to contribute.
Okay, because they did also mess up with the encryption of the database, and you needed to set the VUEM user password. There was a few caveats, but yes, it works just fine. I have not had any issues with it. I have run into issues with the database as far as a lot of deadlocks when you have an oversubscription. So if you have too many users trying to hit the brokers at the same time, that's when I was able to reproduce the deadlock issue that someone brought to my attention. So you just need to expand out your broker infrastructure to get rid of that deadlock. Okay, so policies. Turn on only the things that you need. Do not turn on everything. It will try and process everything. If you only turn on the things you need, then it will skip and won't process these other ones, hence speeding up the logins even more. Now, some of the fun things are, for user experience, everyone seems to want to have icons on the desktop. So one of my favorite things to do is you actually create the shortcut here in your start menu for whatever applications you want, and then create a shortcut to that on the desktop. One, we're not cluttering the user's desktop. Two, we're not adding more space to our folder redirection because that's what we're going to do anyways. So this way you can have all of your applications available on the desktop for the user, but still keep it organized. So how you would go about doing that is a very simple, come on, scroll down. Where did oh, I created it as a shortcut. That's right, an application. Right down here. There it is. So when you're doing your application shortcuts, you have a choice of doing installed application, a URL, or a file or folder. So at this point, all we're doing is we're creating the shortcut to the location of wherever the start menu is going to be. Makes it simple, makes it easy, and I could put that on the desktop. As far as the other settings in here, it's just all standard stuff. And hide the control panel, set it up the way you want it to. You want to lock it down to the point but not affect the user's experience. So they still need to be able to run everything. They still need to be able to save all their applications. Still need to be able to save all their data. The one key thing that I always find at every place I go is everyone wants to disable the run. So if you notice here, I can do a C:, and I get to it. I can do a UNC path, and I can get to it. So if you were to do the simple checkboxes in here of remove run, or if you go into GPO and you say to hide the run or remove the run, as soon as you do that, this is an undocumented feature that everyone seems to either not realize what's going on or always get bit by. I can no longer get to my C:. Nothing's there. I can no longer get to UNC paths. So as soon as you disable the run, you have now really neutered your ability to do anything. So all I'm trying to do is make it so users can't run something, can't sneak into here, go to a run or whatever, can't go to, oh, oops, I resized, my fault. This way they can't go to here and go to, create a new process. That's all I'm trying to do is for security, but now I've neutered myself.
Is there another way to accomplish that without neutering you?
Yes, and that's what I was going to show.
Okay.
Let me fix myself, though, so that way I'm not thoroughly broken. All right, there we go. I'm back. So the way to do it, and there's a whole litany of registry keys here that people are unaware that makes it easier. Not environment, registry. Come on, click the right place. So where is my run? Hide run.
While you're doing this, point out how you're doing the refresh. We have a question from Ray on how you're doing that refresh manually.
Okay. So here is the registry key. That's HKey current user, software, Microsoft, Windows, current version, Explorer, and advanced. The reason I'm reading that to you guys is because there is a litany of registry keys that you could put in here to manipulate that start menu without ever actually doing it in the standard GPO way, which seems to limit you in a lot of different ways. So this is the same as actually checking those boxes in the start menu down here. If you were to go to properties and come into start menu and customize, that location there in the registry is all of these things. So to check the boxes, uncheck the boxes, you can do it all from that registry key. Now to answer the question about the refresh, is the little WEM icon down here in the task tray. Right click on it and choose refresh. This will refresh whatever policies you have coming down.
And if you don't do that, what's the stock again?
Stock is 30 minutes. I usually take it down to 10 minutes. And that is a simple setting here under, is it agent options? No. Advanced options. So under the advanced settings, configuration, advanced options is where you set your automatic refresh.
Oh, and
So that,
Hal, this
yeah,
weekend, Phil Bossman has booked you to write a blog on all these recommended settings, just so you know. We'll
I'm
expect it
actually
Monday morning.
I'm in the process of writing it, as well as I'm in the process of working with the guy that did the WEM hydration kit, because I started with his just to see what he had, and I'm going to help him add a lot more stuff in there.
Cool.
The key thing that he had in his that most people again are unaware of is this one. This is a very important registry key if you guys are dealing with. If you look in directory and you see that, what's it called, Ryan? Can you remember?
No, because you put me on the spot.
There's the last part of the login that
The user init session, I think, is what it is, but I forget the label. I'm sure someone here can help us.
interactive session. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. To all
Yes,
the people saying interactive login, thank you.
Thank you very much. What this does is it'll actually make it so it runs all asynchronously instead of waiting for it to complete before it gives you a Windows login. So therefore, it shaves off anywhere between 15 and 30 seconds, depending on your environment, instantly by just adding this registry key. So make sure that you add this. This is one of the key ones that was in the hydration kit, so definitely thank you.
And how, just
Which
so
is
you're aware,
because WEM parallelizes a bunch of the processes, but I guess that one should be serialized.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. By the way, Phil, Phil wants to know what your favorite beer is because he's going to buy you a beer for that blog.
It's actually Crown Royal, which I know isn't a beer.
Yeah, Crown Royal, which I think is fair for a blog on all the recommended settings. Hey, one thing I want to throw in too is Rafiq asked a question. I'm really surprised, Hal, you and I hadn't brought it up because we always do. Is if the WEM service or database is down, how does redundancy work in WEM? You want me to do it, don't you? All right. So there is a database.
Well,
I'm
Steve.
to it.
Hey,
Yeah?
Steve. I was going to say also maybe we could hold that till we get to the next architecture slide, but Hal's already on top of it, so never mind.
So if the database goes down, this is the broker. It has the cache right here of the database of all the settings that have come down for all the different sites. Since the database is all plain text, it's extremely small, so it easily stores it there. So if the database goes down, the broker continues to work based on its cache. And
if
then
the broker goes down?
the client also has a cache, if I can find it, right here. So that is also a cache of what comes from the broker. So the broker has a cache, the client has a cache, therefore if your database goes down, everything continues to work. If you go offline, everything continues to work. It works just fine on laptops. First thing I did at my new company when I set up the WEM is install it on my laptop, which is always going through VPN and always getting disconnected. And God, I love having it on my laptop.
Hey, Hal, while you're there, we also had a question come in about how this interacts with published applications instead as well.
Yeah, we got to give you some time, Ryan.
I know, but it's okay. Keep going.
So with published applications, excuse me, you can execute only the command agent if you wanted to, or you could actually still have it launch the full GUI. You can hide the agent icon in published apps or not, or you can leave it all out there. There is also a utility that...
Well, hold on. Go back to the full agent versus light, if you will, because we had a follow-up question of they've noticed that it has performance issues with the full agent. So let's let them see that and focus on that setting, please.
Let me see the question.
From Tim Lee.
Tim Lee, okay. I've noticed that some published apps are slowed when using... the question, I guess, becomes, are you using the GUI aspect or using the command line agent? Because there are... If you're doing a published app, you're not getting a full Windows experience. So therefore, there are some things that are currently trying to be run by the UI agent that don't necessarily occur with the command line agent. So if you're doing the published apps, you pretty much always want to do the command line agent, or at least hide the splash screen during published apps, because the splash screen, again, also adds more time. And then the other aspect is there is a utility that you can run for published apps if you have a mandatory need for something to come down from your policy first. It is WEM app command. So you would run that and then pass the application as your parameter to get this to actually launch. No, yeah, WEM app command. It'll use it to launch the WEM first, wait till WEM finishes, and then launch the published app. That is, if you have a specific need on a registry key or a policy or some kind of policies thing, whether it's an environment variable, whole litany of reasons to do that. Anytime you're doing a published app versus a desktop, I would have two different WEM sites because there are different configuration settings that you want. Things like hiding the agent icon or hiding the agent splash screen, I want to do in a published app. Most of the time, I also want to do the command line, execute only the command agent in published app because it is not a full Windows environment. So therefore, I don't need everything to be refreshed. I hope that makes sense.
Hey, let's get down just to maybe one or two more questions, then we'll transition to the next segment, and then we can spend as much time as we're available for after. But I do want to throw one out from you from, I don't know if it's Jamie or Jaime Reynolds. It's a good question because you've been navigating throughout the console. When you're making changes in the web console, is there a save or some other function needed before push, or is it immediate? Meaning, can you have multiple WEM configs in the console or just one live config at a time? Think AppSense Environment Manager.
You have multiple sites, so you can have a test site, you can have a production site, you can have a Zen desktop site, you can have a published app site, you can have any number of sites that you want.
Well,
you see,
when you click apply, you're live, though.
As soon as you click apply, you are live, and then there are other aspects in here that there isn't even an apply button. So if you look in here, there is no apply button whatsoever. As soon as I move that over, that's now live for the user when they log in.
Okay, good. And then we'll take this as the last question in this segment from Eric. Is there a way to configure global settings for all sites instead of per site settings?
You know, you have just asked for a feature request that I've been asking for a long time.
Okay, so that's a no. Let's go ahead and transition here because Ryan's got some awesome content and feedback from his experience on AppLocker. And again, we'll all stay on as long as possible at the end and answer all questions. So thank you, Hal. That was awesome.
Yep. To lead into Ryan here, it comes down to users always want the world. I mean, what can we do? We want to give them the best user experience we can. We want to be able to make everyone happy. I mean, they want to control their environment. So we're giving them the ability to control their printers, the control panels, their applications. They want to install their own software. I'm still on the fence depending on the environment whether that should be allowed or not, but that's what they want to do.
And let's be honest, sometimes we can't stop it. Look at Google Chrome.
Which then leads us into that. Which, Ryan?
Oh. Say that again, I'm sorry. I was speaking over you.
As said, this is what it leads into now, is users always want to cry.
Oh, yes, they do. So let's bring up our last poll as we transition into our favorite part about WannaCry. Who is using AppLocker? Well, maybe we'll get the poll. Ah, there we go. And as far as this, if you are using it, either testing it in the WEM space or just with group policy, either one would be currently using.
See, I told you that's about how it would come out.
You're right. I'm actually, I'll be honest, I'm stunned at how many are actually currently using it, 14%. So.
I do like Webster's comment there of need a fourth option of what the hell is AppLocker?
Well, Webster, Sounds like you've been busy trying to do too much PowerShell.
That's where
All
the
right.
apps go to change before the game, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that. Yeah, if it were that simple, right? Okay, so since Carl is asking, maybe there's some others out there. Let's start with that. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, Hal. But what is AppLocker? AppLocker, for some background history, if you remember the old software restriction policies that came out a while back, which was an attempt to better allow us to whitelist and only let users run the things we wanted. And let's be honest, Microsoft didn't do the best job with version 1, so much so that we've rebranded it in a way of trying to ignore what it was and now what it is. So biggest thing to remember with AppLocker is it doesn't do you any good if you have admin rights. I mean, you can lock it down and maybe create yourself some, or your admin rather, administrative users some annoyances, but they're going to be able to work around almost all of your lockdown policies. The other important part here, and this is why we like WEM over using group policy, is that it allows us to get more granular with user targeting aspects versus just a all-in-one rule set with some filters that go to every computer. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Just recapping back what Hal had shown you earlier with Mr. Cresswell's slide, that the important part is to understand how this works. WEM is, again, just the delivery tool for pushing and managing settings. All WEM is going to do, and I'll show you this here in a second with my demo, is pushing down the group policy registry keys that configure AppLocker on the local machine. Now on top of that, it helps you out because it also will actually start the AppLocker services for you, which is also a caveat that you have to make sure if you're trying to implement this, getting it turned up and turned on. Next slide. In my journeys of learning AppLocker, this was probably the one biggest, most valuable flowchart I found after much searching. So pretty much, again, remember, AppLocker is a whitelisting product. Once you enable the rules, unless you have a rule that allows it to run, it's blocked by default, which hopefully this is pretty clear from the flowchart I've created, right? If you look through, there's pretty much one path to get to file is allowed to execute. All others lead to red. It's that simple. All right, next. Next slide, Hal.
Sorry, PowerPoint just crashed.
Oh, okay. Well, if PowerPoint's crashed, yeah, let's just go right into the demo because
That was the next slide, actually.
Oh, perfect. Well, but they didn't get to see the cool picture, but that's all right. We can deal with that.
There you go.
Ah, there we go.
It came
I
back
worked
up.
hard to find that picture, man. So, okay. Back to the admin console.
By the way, Ryan, if your demo fails, a kitten dies. No pressure.
So is it a bad time to mention I'm a dog person?
I agree with that statement.
Might get you out of it.
I see, I just made some enemies right there. But no, I like cats too. But we'll make the demo work. We won't kill any cats today. So one thing I'll point out, because it was a brought up question earlier, once you sorry, I was reading the comments and got distracted. The heckling is real.
Yeah, yes, it happened a few times to me too, so don't worry about it.
I won't feel too bad. It's all for good fun and everybody's entertainment. We had the honest question about at what points do things apply. With the AppLocker rules, you have to be very careful. So first off, once you turn this on, it's up in here, application security. You turn this on, WEM is going to actually start turning on the backend services, enabling the AppLocker service, and users who are in a site are going to get thumped by those. My recommendation is always create a test site for your users to use and roll out everything there first before you put this on your users. Because going back to user experience, if you do this wrong, you will have the guys at your door with the pitchforks, and it could even be as bad as a resume generating event, right? Depends on your environment. So,
And if you look at what we went through in the lab last night until 2 in the morning, it's very much a headache to try and figure out.
absolutely. Hopefully we'll give you some tips and tricks to get that not be so painful. But that's my recommendation. Put everything off in its own little site, some little test pieces. You can actually export and import rules right here with the import. And here you can export your rules with the backup button. So there's a way to move these from site to site. There's not an automatic right click and move this to the other site, unfortunately, yet. Back to the feature request piece, right? But the original point we're going to make is if I add a rule here, and I'm just going to make a fake rule that won't work. We'll go with pass. We'll apply it to everyone.
One question that I want to point out there.
Yep.
Have WEM installed but only have process management. We are running the publicly available tech preview, which is 4.4.5. That gives you the app blocker stuff. So it is a tech preview. I do want to point that out because there are a lot of feature requests and bug findings that we have in this as well.
Hey, Hal, your audio got real quiet. If you can adjust that.
Sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
It is.
Okay. Sorry. Like I was saying, we are on 4.4.5, which is the tech preview publicly available.
No wonder you were sweating about the demo.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
we're not
so
running the current production one.
Yeah, let's just be clear. So you're saying that the app blocker integration Ryan's showing is actually technically future?
It is technically future, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is available in the tech preview public version today that you can download. I don't recommend anyone implement this version, and we'll get to those reasons in a couple of minutes, but they have identified most of the bugs and they are fixing them. I have a release candidate I can't show because they basically gave it to us to prove that I wasn't insane and this will work, right? So we'll show some of that here in a second. But so we'll make a quick rule. Once I hit create, that's applied. The next time the WEM agent refreshes or a user logs on, he will be affected by that rule. To that end, always start all of your rule-making entertainment with this little rule enforcement being in audit mode. Okay? That ensures that you can then log into a machine, such as our little demo guy here, and get nice, happy messages such as this. And I'm going to kind of rush through this since we are getting short on time, and then we'll have questions for those who can stay later. But the important part here is you come into your event viewer, application services, Microsoft, Windows, app blocker, and your different types of rules, which I'll jump back to here in just a second. Each get their own event log to tell you what happens. So if I come in, run any of my little apps here, which right now, since we're in audit mode only, excuse me, they all work as they should because we're not audit. And you see they were all allowed to run, but you get the eater would be blocked. Just so you can see, I'll come to another machine. This one's in block mode. Chrome works as it should. We want that. Same tools folder. He works, and that's fantastic because I have a rule that allows CTools, anything in CTools to work. Come in here. He says no. Why is this important? Going back to our whole statement earlier about users want to cry. If you have dealt at all with WannaCry in your environment, how does it come in? It comes through the user executable places like the user profile where the users can write and then runs an exe. If we don't allow users to run exes there, we've added a nice, very good wall of security against malware and such. Like
so Ryan, I have a question which I'm going to transition to a question that Rory asked, but mine is, you know, historically with whitelisting, you just don't know all the crap that's out there, right?
Right.
You can take this simple exe and, okay, yeah, I know about that, but what about the sub-executables and the other things it launches that you only find out after you deploy it? So there's that question, but also, what about alerting and logging? Roy's asking if WEM integrates to tell you something was blocked, or where do you find that information?
Back to the first example, all of it is logged into the event log. I'm jumping machines simply because I already have it up here, right? So here's your event log that would do this. If you want centralized, I recommend something like a Splunk forwarder or other tool that gives you centralized event logging of your targets. I have asked that there is some kind of magic WEM centralized logging for at least app locker events to encourage adoption. But with the feature request that we've already put in, I'm not sure that we'll do that. So if you find that interesting, I suggest if you are ever in a position to say it, bring that up as your personal feature request too then.
Okay, so it's standard logging. Really interesting question from Rafiq. Can you set the app locker policy on the program's hash? That's a great question.
Well, actually, you can do something a little bit cooler. So for the ones paying attention, I have a signed version and a not signed version. So those not familiar with code signing, what that really means is I get a digital signatures tab here on my executable if I sign it. Now I'm just cheesy. I use my own internal CA to sign something versus this is what it looks like if you have a not signed one, right? You missed the tab. App locker can actually key on that. Oh, I killed the cat. Sorry, guys.
That was one of the things that we've been trying to get working since, for the last few days.
And I was all excited because I got it working 10 minutes before the webinar started.
Using preview software.
Yes. So normally, when I demoed this up until just the second, this would actually work. And so one of the tricks you can do here, and I'll come into those rule sets to answer the question, is you can create publish signed rules where it's either a file hash. Try to reopen that. There we go. File hash or publisher setting, and you can get as granular as you want. So you could actually have it this code signing cert against this publisher name with a file all the way down to certain versions or above. So you have a lot of granular control. The problem goes back to one of the earlier questions of, Steve, I don't know if that was yours or one of our attendees, how do you manage all this effectively? So my recommendation for getting a layer of security that's better than what without this, but manageable, because that's the whole problem with security, right? It's balancing lockdowns versus UX versus manageability, that little triangle, if you will. Keep your rules high, especially if you have non-persistent images. This is a great fit. You control it. You know everything that's on it, so you can lock down where the users can copy files to, and just like I have here, any files that are in the Windows or Program Files folders, they're fair game. But anything outside of those places, and that's why I added the demo rule for tools, because that might, be your internal companies where you write all your in-house software. Instead of program files, it's See My Company or whatever. In this case, it's these tools for me. Open those up, everyone's free game, because as long as they can't write there, and you only give them execute and read, you've given that layer of security. They can't copy WannaCry into C tools, execute it, it'll get blocked. Because they can't write there, they can't execute it. The only places they can do is their profile. They can't run any executables outside of that path that you've allowed. You've locked it down.
Is it smart enough, Ryan, is it smart enough to automatically whitelist all the system type stuff that runs in the user level? Like if you turn it on, do you block anything that you'd normally use that you're not calling a explicit application?
It can. Let me, and WEM's not here yet, so since you asked, I'll just jump to group policy. So when you come into group policy and you have your executable rules, you can actually automatically generate rules based off of an index machine.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah, exactly.
Follow this wizard, and you get this. Now here's the cool part. I'm going to, for sake of time, not finish it. I can now come into the app locker piece here, and I can export all those policies into an XML that I can bring into WEM. So while they're working on getting the same wizard parity inside of WEM, you can use the old tool to generate your list, bring it into WEM, and use WEM as the delivery agent.
Okay, and this kind of relates to a question from
policy.
Okay, sorry, the audio was cut out. Shiva asks, he's running 4.4 and he sees app locker menus in that version. Are there more features in 4.4.5 related to app locker, or what does the preview and the future one bring?
So the current tech preview gives you path statements. So let me show you that. So you can see here, these are working great, and I have paths. Now here's the kicker, and this took us a little while to figure out. I can create all the proper rules. I have packaged rules, which For those not aware, those are the universal or AppX rules. So if you're using Win 10, you need these. If you don't have them and you turn this on, you will break your start menu. Keep that in mind.
Another thing we were trying to figure out for the last few hours.
Yes. I'm not a big fan of installer and script rules, but those are going to apply per individual. The one side piece is we have a lot of rabbit holes there. AppLocker is a huge topic. The nice part is there's tons of Microsoft MVPs who have written a litany of educational materials. Sammy Liho, who does a lot with some of the online training pieces, and I can't remember the name of where he trains right this second, but we'll get some links posted up. I have a references slide later that has a bunch of good primers for getting started with AppLocker, but Google will be your friend, right? That's the best part here. We're just leveraging a Microsoft technology and changing the delivery mechanism. Back to the question, what do we don't get? Well, right now, in the tech preview that we're running that's public, it only pushes the AppLocker path rules. The hash rules, the publisher rules, the package rules, they're not getting pushed. And let me show you how that works, because this is important. So going back to our prior discussion, we're just using WEM to push the same GPO configs that we would with GPO. That's right here. HKey local machine, policy, Microsoft, software restriction policy v2, i.e. AppLocker, and then you see a hash or a GUID here for each of your different rules. But if you look, I have a lot more rules than I'm getting because it's only pushing the file path rules. Anything that's a publisher path isn't supported and getting pushed right now. Same with the file hash, but it can do the file hash as well. The trick with the file hash becomes, of course, if those change or you have newer versions. If you have like, I'll use PuTTY. I can get on a lot of former customers' images and they'll have 3 or 4 different versions of PuTTY on the different images. You got to be careful because you might block one and not the other if you use hash rules, but they are available to you. And again, I'm not going to lie and sit up here and pretend this isn't foolproof. It's just better armor on your virtual environments if you enable some basic rules than you would have today, even with AV. And that's the whole point here, right? Adding another layer of security that you can easily control, not affect the user UX, and it's a quick win once you get the rules dialed in.
I do want to point out one little caveat there that you haven't quite mentioned yet. It is putting it into HKey local machine, just like Microsoft would do it with its GPOs, which means when you get into an RDS scenario, right now it's not a good idea.
Right, they are working on that support. That is something coming. So to finish the question, what's coming is in the next tech preview that should be releasing shortly. They're fixing all the publisher signed rules, all the block rules, and we're hoping to see better or some more clear message about how session hosts will work. Right now, if you wanted to test session hosts, my best advice, if you have to use it, just make sure that all the rules can apply to every user, which might mean opening it up a little more than you'd like, but it still might be better security than you have without it.
Than you would have.
Right?
Okay, I just want to acknowledge that we're at the top of the hour, so that was our scheduled time. I think we're all happy to stay longer, continue to discuss things and answer questions. I just want to thank everyone who maybe has to go on the hour for attending. We want to respect your time. And then I guess, Ryan, are you ready for some questions?
As much as I'll do my best to answer them, yes.
Okay, so now we can go back to WEM or AppLocker questions. Let's try to start with the AppLocker questions first, so as a natural transition. And then, Hal and Ryan, you good for going a little bit longer and handling some questions and discussion?
Yeah, I just have lunch scheduled at this point, so yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Ryan. That was great. And looking forward to when it comes to production and not just tech preview. So I think we're going to ask you to do a blog as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just
wondering which screen you guys are seeing now.
The references, which is good for everyone to get to see the final slides. For completeness, here's some references. We'll give you about 10 more seconds to screenshot it, but you'll be able to get this on the replay. The last one, the sign executables, if you want to do your own in-house signing, you'll need, of course, a CEA with a code signing cert, but you'll need that Win 10 SDK to get the sign tool in order to actually sign the exes like I showed you kind of in my example that should have worked. Let's not dwell on that poor cat.
Okay, before we transition, Ryan from the audience says that was freaking awesome. Thank you so much. It was
You're
great,
welcome.
guys. And Phil is back with beer for all. Just
I'm
be
going to take him
careful
up on
when
that.
you say that, Phil, because we're all going to be at Synergy. So just so you know.
And we do drink.
All right, so let's
Let's go
roll
ahead.
back into questions or
Well,
discussions now.
do we need to finish up the slides? I don't think there's any others we need, is there, for
Uh,
completeness?
Nope. We're
All right.
on to Stephanie's slides at that point.
And then also there was a request earlier to put our Twitter handles up. So Hal, if you own the PowerPoint, if you can maybe just type them on the slide, that'd be great.
Or just jump back to the intro slide, maybe.
Did we have our Twitter handles there?
Yep.
There's our Twitter handles for us, and then Steve's is right there.
Actual name at Steve Greenberg.
Yep.
So lessons learned have a presenter's recap slide with everyone's Twitter handle at the end. There we go. We learned something today.
The Windows Start menu tiles. No, let's not talk about that right now, James.
well, here, I can talk about that. Yes, if you want them, make sure you do the AppX policies, or else you don't get a start menu in Windows 10. That part we'll talk about. How's that? So.
How does AppLocker deal with machine learning AV like Silence? Silence is still going to be running out of the program files directory, so it should be good to go. It's not like you're going to install that into a CAV folder and then block that from.
Yeah, the short answer is, assuming that you don't block Silence, which you shouldn't be, as Hal said, it's going to be a secondary set of armor, right? If you don't block it with an AppLocker policy, or you've opened up a vulnerability by having two kind of AppLocker policy, and Silence finds something that shouldn't run that it thinks shouldn't run, it's then going to block it for you, right? So it's a tag team effect.
Awesome. And
ask them how they act with AppLocker, because the reality is we're just using AppLocker. We're just the management piece, right?
It's still native AppLocker otherwise.
Exactly.
Shiva's asking, any chance you can talk a little on filters and how to apply them? I think it's a good question because that's practical. You know, we see all the settings, but maybe give us some examples of how to use the filters.
All right. So I actually used one here for the Windows 10. Yeah, open. So basically, I did it as the client OS because I'm looking at the client being where the target software is running. So the VUEM agent software. If I wanted the remote client OS, that would be if this thing would stop scrolling on me, client remote OS match. So what we're doing is you just got to choose whichever filter you want in here, whatever filter condition. And there is a long litany of them. So here I am filtering this one specifically on Windows 10, and I got one for 2016. What these will do is after you've created a condition, you then create your rule. So that way you have the rule that's, in this case, anytime it's a Windows 10. And then when you do your assignments is how you set it. So to go to the example of what I used it for is my Office products. We do not have Office installed on our Win 7, but we do on the Win 10. So anything, the Office shortcuts you will see do not show up on this one at all. But if I log into Win 10, we should see them. So ways that I've used it in the past is changing OSs like this, as well as different client subnets. So if a user is coming in from a certain subnet, I've done a filter saying that they get these printers coming from this subnet, or they get these printers coming from this subnet. And that way I can assign all the printers to all the users and just have it apply to whatever subnet they're coming from. A lot of times your filters that you're going to end up using that are 99% of what you're going to do are strictly going to be based on user groups. But if you have to break it out more, that's how you would do it. So you just choose whatever you want conditions. And it can get as granular as you want. It has very standard ones of AD attributes, client attributes, environment variables. Then there's the opposite of each one of those. So that's why there's so many. If you really, really want to get into something really granular, you can do a WMI query. I never suggest that because that takes up a lot of time and resources. Or you can also do anything XenApp or XenDesktop. So my Windows 10 should be back. If you'll notice now I have Excel. Where's my Word?
Yeah.
I have my policy or my shortcuts in there now. And since I'm folder redirected, they probably showed up in here too.
And again, your filter was the OS version in this case.
Yes. So
That's
they
great
didn't
on filters.
originally show up here, but they did here because the folder redirection it gets a little screwy.
Yep. Great on filters. Let me run over to OUs and AD objects because this always confused me in the interface, how that works, how you populate it. And Graham's asking that he can no longer see the OUs he's added in the Active Directory objects machines node. I know they're there because when I try to add them again, it says they're already there. Any idea what's causing that? Maybe also address how you populate that as well.
Currently, I still use actual objects. The reason I use the objects is because the environments that I've worked in always have nested OUs, and nested is not supported. So every time I try and put one in that has the machines in it, it says session host, session host, session host, session host. So I've never actually dealt with the OU part of it very much, except in labs. And I've never had the OU disappear on me. So that's a new one. I'm going to have to start playing in the lab to see if I can get that to recreate, to figure out what's going on.
Okay.
And since you have it up, Hal, we also had a question about auditing within the WEM console, similar to config logging.
Okay. So under
Show
administration.
how that works.
So under the administration here, you can see that we were working a lot late last night and this morning. It tells you everything that was created, deleted. You could do it against all sites. You could do it against a specific site, change whatever times you want. Also gives you the agent logs to tell you when the agents came in, registered, what they registered against. So that's basically all there is to the logging. I mean, it'll tell you who did it. And of course, Ryan always logged in as the administrator, so you can see
Hey,
it.
it's my lab. Back off.
It is your lab. So that's the logging aspect of WEM.
And Josh has a question about delaying an app's launch, XenApp, till an external task like a login script runs. Haven't found a way to do that yet.
That's actually what the that XenApp command that I was showing you does. If your login script is a WEM policy object, it will wait till that completes before it will continue on with the application.
The serial registry key, you mean?
No. Go back to my... So when you do your... oops, wrong directory. When you do your published app, your published app will be this command. Yep, that's what I thought. All right. Run as administrator. See, I'm under the gun. I can never type with everyone watching me.
It's only 82 people, you know.
Okay,
No
so we've dropped to about 50. So
I've already
you
killed
run,
the cat. It's okay.
yes, you run this command space and then your application, and it will wait until everything from VUEM has completed before it'll run the application. That is the idea of that specific executable, and it's found with every client install. So that's how you would get around that. I've seen a couple times now the whole HKey local machine for registry actions. This is a user-based product, so unfortunately the only HKLM stuff it does is App Locker, UPM, and then its own settings. Anything that's user-based, it's not going to do via HKLM. You have to still do it through a third party, whether it's GPOs, putting it in your image, some other kind of machine-based setting.
Okay. This one's for you, Ryan. from James, does WEM handle the prereq for the appropriate Windows services to be running for AppLocker?
It does. It's actually really nice. I was all prepared and mental. I had all the notes up, but I turned it on and it automatically starts it as part of that piece. So if you remember the WEM service piece, one of the first things it does is actually starts the AppLocker service. So Hal, since you're sharing, if you can just bring up the services list real quick. So for those not aware, the application identity service by default is set to manual. Now, if you've set it with group policy to disable, I haven't tested what WEM does to it, but it should, because I've seen it push the right registry keys and everything, put it back to manual and put it as start it during the user login process once it's already brought down some rules. The reason it does this is that way once it pulls the rules down, it starts the service so the service can see the rules right from the get-go. Does that make sense?
Yep. Very good. Shiva's asking, this is a good one because it's about the relationships between GPO, ADM, ADMX. Can we push HKLM keys with reg actions and import and apply custom, like Adobe Reader, for example, GPO, ADMs, or ADMX files?
Unfortunately, there is no import of ADM or ADMX files, but the fun thing is those are just a simple read, and I say simple very sarcastically, if anyone's ever tried to open those things up and take a look. But it does tell you exactly what registry key you need to apply. So if you have the ADM and the ADMXs, you can crack those open and take a look. And I know I just ran across a couple tools out there that'll read those and spit out the registry keys for you. I can't remember what any of them are called right offhand. But there are tools that will read an ADMX or an ADM file and just tell you what reg keys are being applied. So you can then take those reg keys and put them directly into WEM or file actions or whatever it is. But again, no HKLM, only HKey current user.
And Hal, what's your view on ADM, ADMX in WEM? It seems like a gap to me that you can't import them. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes and no. I'd like to see an import process, but the problem is, like with all the app senses and res, as soon as you do the import of the ADMX or the ADM, it immediately goes to processing it with the group policy service, which is very inefficient and takes a lot of time. So if you're downloading the ADM and ADMX, the local system's then going to use the local GPO service to apply it all, which means you've now lost the benefits of WEM.
Oh, I actually, that's an interesting point. I was thinking more like the tool you were referring to, actually pull out the settings and then make them WEM objects. But yeah, that's a good point.
I would love a setting that'll do that, where I can import the ADM, ADMX just to get the registry keys and not have to worry about it. But again, be careful which ones you choose, because a lot of them are buggy, as I showed with the no run registry key that everyone uses all the time.
Right. Yeah, so it's dangerous, especially if you just wholesale bring them all in.
Exactly.
So maybe it needs to be something more like it can interpret an ADM, ADMX file and then show you a list of possible settings, and then you can import those into WEM selectively. That seems reasonable.
Yep, that would be nice.
Okay.
Again, something I've asked for, but I was always told, yeah, not really even on the radar.
Yeah, even some of the other third parties that were around longer didn't have that for a long, long time. And then when they did, I don't even think it was a complete.
Well, I know.
William suggested we look at Registry Workshop for transforming ADMXs to reg files that we might be able to work with.
I think that's what it was called that I ran across. So thank you, Salim. Hope I said your name right.
Me too. I hope so.
Me too, because I've been saying it. How about client-side logging? James is suggesting it might be worth showing the client-side logging and RSOP priceless.
Yeah, that is this little tool, which I really love. The Citrix WEM resultant policy editor, of course, is found in this directory with every install. It is this RSAV, VUEM RSAV here. Tells you everything that has come down, your applied actions, what was excluded, why it was excluded. So in this case, it was excluded because we're on Windows 7. So that environment filter did not allow it. What environment settings? What have I turned on? Do I have my folder redirection, which I didn't actually cover with you guys what I do with folder redirection. I thought it was in here. Oh, there it is. The USB settings. So folder redirection, I redirect a lot of things, but never app data. That is the last thing I want to do. If I'm dealing with profiles, let the profile handle app data, never redirect app data. It tells you all the settings that you got, if you're connected or not to your site, and then, of course, the logs. These logs are great. One of my favorite things when I'm having issues is I come in here and I click debug mode and do a refresh, and it gives me a verbose log as if I'm in debug, but it does not actually put the application, does not put WEM in debug mode. So it just gives me the log that way so I can see what's going on in a more detailed idea. It also has a log parser, which will take that log and make it much easier to read. Why do I never redirect app data? Because you cause a lot of problems. There's a lot of applications that constantly are reading things from the app data, and if you're going across a network wire to try and get some of that data, the applications are slow to respond. The applications will sometimes crash, and the applications won't save data like they are supposed to correctly. So I've never had a good experience redirecting app data, and I've never recommended it. If you're having a roaming profile of any kind, why bother redirecting app data? That's the whole idea of the profile, is to capture the registry and files anyways of the application. So
And then
you
get the benefit of streaming it too, so it's best of both worlds.
Well, and Hal, I've had a couple instances where, because of like weird app configs, we needed to redirect app data, and unfortunately, at this second, I can't give you the example, but if you ever feel you do have and need one, look at using symlinks instead of redirecting all of app data, and just redirect the folder for that specific app to a network share.
Yeah, that makes sense. There are some that require that, and
right. There's exceptions to every rule, right? And the reality is the app data redirected the profile's been a huge topic among profile discussions at Synergy for years and years. So I recommend, if you want more, go Google the background, right?
Yeah, again, most of everything we're saying here is for general practices and our best practices. It is not necessarily the only way to do it. There are 1,000 ways to do this stuff. Just from years of experience, we are finding that this stuff works the best, but mileage will vary depending on your environment.
And Brian's asking one that I'm going to take, which is, how about installing WEM on endpoint devices and the impact on licensing? We've used to do it. We've deployed it on endpoints. Citrix has said they're moving towards it. We've not been able to get the actual license or entitlement yet. I don't know, Hal, if you've heard any updates. We keep being told yes, but we haven't been given the mechanism to do it. My interpretation, I don't work for Citrix, this is my personal opinion, not investment advice, that if that client is running the receiver and using the farm, it's entitled to it.
Yeah, Steve, I've had similar mixed conversations. My recommendation would be check with your Citrix sales specialist and make sure that you just have some kind of documentation saying you can do it. It works fantastic. Those watching my versions of the demos, I went through RDP because I'm on static machines that would simulate just desktops, whereas Hal went through Citrix so you could see both sides of the experience. We kind of rigged it that way on purpose. Hey, Hal, why don't you flip it back over, because I want to resuscitate the cat. I fixed the demo.
Woohoo!
Got to save this kitty cat.
Still got 8 lives. Don't stress about it.
Only a little bit. So we're back to the same machine. CPU eater works. CPU eater doesn't work. The signed CPU eater also now works.
Yay!
Yay!
Yay! So, Hal, there was a question that came in though about let's just say non-persistent machines, MCS or PVS, and having caching challenges with WEM. What are your recommendations around that if they encounter it?
I always put in my image the latest and greatest cache that I have. So part of my reseal script is to always cache it down into that image, so when it boots up, it always has something. The only thing that should really change on a day-to-day basis between the configuration that gets cached and the configuration that's on the WEM servers is the user-based stuff. And every time the user logs in, it by default will check the WEM server first as long as it has communication. So the cache is strictly only a backup, and it should pull down the latest and greatest stuff from the WEM server. If it's not, I would start looking at, there's some registry keys that you can put in to make sure that the desktops will not accept any kind of connection until the network is online and ready. I would start looking at applying those just to make sure that you are online and ready before you even try and log into that box.
And Shiva's question also had the agent issue. So his question was 4.4 has issue in PVS environment not syncing with WEM server. Workaround restart agent on VM start. Is that addressed in the preview release?
I'm going to have to say not that I've seen, but the problem is I haven't seen your problem either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either, but we were seeing some funky issues when we were trying to use PVS for our lab here to start with.
Yeah.
Whether some of it was that or not, we don't know.
Let's blame that on Ryan's lab. Trust me, that was Ryan's lab.
Ryan's lab it is.
So, but we'll see if we can't get some follow-up information for that one.
And that one may cross over into a support issue.
Exactly.
Oh, he's giving us a documented issue in the chat.
Yeah, we'll have to look into it.
Yes, I'm definitely going to have to. Let's see. Profile Unity and WEM. Do I really want to cover that right now?
It's probably better if we let Citrix
Yes.
marketing cover that one for everyone's sake.
Well, all right, but let me just ask, do you mean Profile Unity is the profile and WEM is
Oh.
I know, I'm just asking.
No,
But he said compare, not complementary.
Compare.
But it is worthy to mention, Hal, if you want to go into those details about how it can configure it.
I don't want to
pass
touch
on that one.
Okay.
I don't want to touch on that one.
Yeah, we'll pass.
This is a Citrix webinar, not a. I want to try and keep it just the technical side. So the article that they sent out, the synchronization state is unknown. Redirecting the WEM cache is having the issue. See, I don't redirect the WEM cache.
Right, exactly.
Let's talk about why.
So one of the main reasons I don't redirect the WEM cache or the optimization cache is specifically in a PVS environment, I want it all to be straight out fresh every time it boots up because I don't know what user's logging in. One day it could be Excel, needs to be optimized. Next day it's Adobe Reader. The next day it's AutoCAD. I have no idea. So why do I want to pigeonhole my users with their user experience in already having a cached optimization, as well as if I put the cache on the database cache on a static drive, you start seeing inconsistencies where it can't read it because it's coming up, it has a new ID, all of a sudden it can't read that database correctly. I've seen that happen many times, which is one of the reasons why I say never redirect the cache, never redirect the optimization data. Always keep it in the image so that way it's fresh every time it comes up.
And again, there might be exceptions. I think that feature set was created for some large customers where tens of thousands of people were running the same app, right, all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, the short is you really don't need to do it. So if you are having that problem that is on that blog article, we recommend trying just not redirecting it, seeing if it solves your problems.
Right.
And James has also put out there that some of the sync state issues can be firewall based, since the brokers do have a WMI requirement into the endpoints, which is a very true statement. Thank you, James.
Well, and another one that we've seen, Hal, is that if you overload your broker because you have way more hosts than you have provisioned for back-end brokers, you can get in the same state, remember?
Yes. So again, there is a hard, fast rule of 5,000 users per broker. That does not mean 5,000 users per environment. You can easily have more than 5,000 users per site. I've gotten a lot of comments while at Synergy and other places How do I have more than 5,000 people running on one WEM site? Well, multiple brokers. Use load balancing and balance them across, and you don't have to worry about that. Well, we've lost about half the audience.
Yeah, but that means 50% is totally hardcore. That is freaking awesome. You guys rock. Fantastic discussion. Maybe if there's any one or two more, we'll take them, and then we'll
let's take one or two more, and then we'll look through these and see if there's anything we can just cover in a follow-up blog article, Hal, since it sounds like we're on the hook for 2 or 3 already.
It sounds like it.
You guys are both blogging this weekend, so you need some material.
Oh, for the question for multi-site WEM and single non-persistent images, how can we pre-cache?
Ooh, good question.
Well, when you actually cache, it caches down the entire config, all the sites. It does not cache down just the one site that you're a member of. So you can look at it that way. When a machine changes sites, it's going to have all the information in the database. Is the start layout on the 2016.
That goes back to seeing the Windows 10 challenges, but
yeah, it's being worked on. I know it's being worked on from Citrix's perspective, and there's a lot of customized scripts that you can.
Most of this goes back to the problem that Windows 10 and up uses the database for the start menu stuff. So.
Yep.
And also putting things to the taskbar is weird in that OS too, right?
Yes, it is. But again, the taskbar works a lot better than the tiles do, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I guess the short answer would be look at start menu replacement options for 2016 and Win 10 if that's what you need today and you need something today. I know there's 2 or 3 products out there that basically put classic start menu on top of 10 in 2016. Another question we had was the migrating replicate WEM settings. There is a export and import setting for all stuff.
Yep, right here. How. So if you were to it'd be in your WEM setting, hit the backup, actions, settings, or security settings. Settings is all of the stuff that is agent based. So all the stuff down here. Actions, of course, is all of this. And the system optimization also falls under settings. And then the application security, of course, is the app locker. So you can export it and import it in. What you end up missing is all the assignments to sites and all the assignments to your registry / actions in any way, shape, or form. So you have to redo that. I have been working on trying to get all the information from SQL. I was working with a customer a while ago trying to map it all through SQL to see if I can match it back and forth, and it's possible, but it's been a real pain. I've been able to pull the information. I haven't been able to put it back in yet, but I'm still working on that. And James, I'd like to work with you on that documentation script. Webster was supposed to put us together a while ago for that. So.
Well, and I'll tell you both, stay tuned because the next version is going to have everything you want.
Perfect.
They're writing native PowerShell. I don't know if it will get released, but I can tell you I have a copy and it works pretty darn well.
Webster, I'm not going to answer you. Win95 and NT4, you should be shot for even asking that.
You should be shot as a consultant for not helping them upgrade.
And then I guess we'll call it there and let Stephanie take back and explain how it's going to be available to answer that question, unless you guys have anything else.
Well, I think we should let you guys go. You've got a lot of blogging to do, and we need it up by Monday morning, so you should get started.
Yeah, good luck with that.
We'll see what we can get done, but we do like you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, great participation. Thank you all for coming. This was a great discussion. Thank you, Ryan and Hal. Awesome. And Stephanie, if you want to take it and run us out.
Absolutely. You guys can't see me, but I'm grinning from ear to ear. This is exactly what a CUGC user share should be. It's fabulous. I love all the interaction, lots of great questions, and really love that so many people stayed on for so long to hear more information. It's great. So with that, I just want to let you all know there is a link to a very short anonymous survey in the chat window. I'd love to have you guys fill it out, get your comments, suggestions. We love to get all your feedback. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at myCUGC. And come on out to the website. We have a lot of webinars coming up. And now you want to check out that calendar. We got more user shares coming, some really good ones, and we'll be announcing some soon for the start of 2018. So with that, I will let all of you guys get back to your day. Hal and Ryan, I am definitely holding you to that blog post. I will send you all of these questions, and I will bother you until you get it done.
Thanks.
Thanks.
We might need to send you a puppy and a bottle of Crown.
Well, blog post will be done tomorrow.
And Stephanie, since I'm leaving this to go to our Omaha CUGC, I'll remind everyone, support your local CUGC community as well.
Absolutely.
Join
one or start one. Join one or start one. They're awesome. And especially the hardcore people who are still on should be in one or start one.
Yep, and I want to put the plug out there as well. If you have any content that you feel people would learn from or just have fun with, please. User shares are always welcome.
And if you're not sure where to start, reach out to any of us on this call. We'll be happy to help you get started.
Yep, and I just put my email address in the chat. You can always reach out to me too. So we always are looking for user shares. Love them. All right, thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate it. All right, you guys have a great afternoon.
Yep, thank you.
Bye.